Like I said, I work with the Van Buren Conservation District, and I have some grants that are very similar to Mark's programs, where I'm working with growers to put in different conservation practices to do exactly what these guys are promoting soil health, building organic matter, having better infiltration. So you guys know those benefits of cover crops and these practices and stuff. So I'm going to talk about how we're getting these cover crops put into our systems in the Van Buren area. So just a little bit about us. Like I said, very similar to Mark's programs in the Conservation District here in Allegan. We have several different ag-related grants where we're working with growers. Typically, we're working with the corn and bean growers of the area. A TNC grant, a couple TNC grants. The one I'm going to talk specifically about is from the Southwest Michigan Planning Commission. We're also working with our Drain Commissioner in the Village of Pawpaw on some of these grants. So it's pretty exciting. We're getting a lot of focus area on us, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. With these grants, we're able to put on educational opportunities just like this, where we hold workshops, lots of field days, and we're becoming more of a resource for our growers. We are finally seeing growers come to us and ask us questions and wanting to work with us. Part of that is incentive money to try some of these practices. You know, change is scary. You know, if you have a system that's working really well for you, to make some of these changes is kind of a big step. So, you know, this insurance, it's kind of like insurance money to help get through some of those years. But mainly we're looking to protect the Pawpaw River watershed. Here's a picture of the Pawpaw River watershed. You can see it's mainly within the Van Buren County. The whole watershed is about 285,000 acres. So it's a pretty decent size. I don't think it's quite as big as the Macatawa, but it's a decent size to do work on and actually see some changes on. That green area I'm going to focus on a little bit more. That's our sediment reduction grant. So it's estimated that within the whole Pawpaw River watershed, that about 10,000 tons of sediment, which we talked about with Trevor's first presentation, you know, about how sediment can be very detrimental. So we are estimating about 10,000 tons just from the Pawpaw River watershed, which empties into the St. Joe River, which then empties into Lake Michigan. So we're having that same type of issue happening with sediment being our #1 pollutant. So we're focusing within that Pawpaw watershed, we're focusing on 3 sub-watersheds, which are the most highly erodible lands, which is based on the slope and the land cover, and almost 70% of that area is agriculture, which is why we decided to start working with the growers of the area. Same thing, you know, there's lots of different reasons why sediment's getting into our water bodies, but working with ag owners and land users, you can really see these changes in a hurry. You can really see the sediment being reduced within a year's time. So with this grant, we're paying growers to do the no-till, the filter strips, reduced till, and cover crops. And that's just to protect, you know, the sediment from being moved. With this grant, the first year I started, we had about 800 acres enrolled in cover crops alone. That's a lot, and these are mainly corn and bean guys. So one of the questions I got is, how am I going to do this? How am I going to get the cover on if I'm farming a couple thousand acres? So that's part of the challenge, as you know, we've been talking about. This year we had a really wet fall. People couldn't even do their normal chiseling if they wanted to do that. So, you know, if we have more of these years like this, then it's just a problem getting these plants in. We talk about application a little bit, how drilling is really the best, it has the best stand, but if you have a wet fall, you're going to have issues with that. Management, you know, same thing. We've talked about that before, being the cover off. If you do end up planting a cover crop that does not winter kill and grows into the spring, you know, making sure you get that killed off is a new management technique. So just a couple things like 50-degree temperature nights is a good way to know that's a good time to go in and kill your cover crop when you know that temperature comes up a little bit more. Making sure you're doing midday applications and using the right herbicides and formulas to actually get that cover managed. And timing's good too. You don't want to get it off too early, you know, because you want that nitrogen to be available for the cash crop at a good time. And cost, we talked about that. It's initial expense. But the main challenge is you just don't have enough time to get in, and get all of your fields covered in the fall. So you have a couple thousand acres if you want to do cover crops. One solution we're finding is aerial seeding into the standing corn beans. Just some steps to success, picking the right mix. We're finding that, the cocktail mixes are great, but to get some people started, we'll do like a monoculture like we did in our co-op, and I'll talk more about that. So annual ryegrass is really popular. It grows on concrete, so it grows on really poor quality soils and high quality soils. We really like that. Crimson clover, rapeseed, winter wheat, and cereal rye are all commonly used in the aerial seeding method. We used about a 25 pounds per acre rate for the annual ryegrass, or 70 pounds for cereal rye. It's pretty common. You've got to up that rate, but it's going to be very similar to if you're drilling late in the season, you're getting into late November and you're drilling in your seed, you're going to have to up your rate as well. So that will be somewhat comparable. The next two were seed is weighed in the auger truck with a scale and then calibrated for the plane so that it's a proper application rate. I'm going to show you some pictures of what those tools look like and what those trucks look like. So we'll talk more about that in a minute. But really working with the right pilots, someone that has been doing this, kind of knows what to look for as far as like the wind and how high they need to go, the speed they need to go. So working with someone who is somewhat experienced with this is really going to help with the success of making sure that we have even stand and germination throughout the field. We don't want a lot of streaks, and that happens sometimes too. So they typically use like a GPS system, so it's pretty high tech, when it comes to aerial seeding. So working with the right people is really helpful. Working with the middleman, someone like me, has been really successful for our program. Essentially, the growers come in, we sit down, I map out some of their fields, and then I work with the seed dealer who works with the aerial seeder. So I'm kind of like the middleman. So essentially, you come in, tell me what you want seeded, and then you pay the bill, and that's about all you have to deal with. So it's worked really well for us. About 10 growers participated. It also helps reduce the cost by having several growers go in on it, rather than one grower or two growers separately, having to buy the seed and then work with the aerial seeder. We can kind of do the cooperative and bring that price down. It was about $32 an acre this year, which is not cheap, to say the least, but once you start thinking about like drilling in your seed, the cost of the wear and tear on the tractors and things like that, you can totally bring that cost up to do just the drilling as well. And like I said before, I produced a lot of the maps. This is one of my growers. He called me the day he got his soybeans off and said, come look at this cover. And he was pretty excited about it. He's hosting our spring field day, and we're going to dig a root pit and look to see how far those roots got. This is a picture of the map that I created. As you can see, we don't have square, straight, big fields. These are some smaller fields. So finding an aerial seeder that was willing to work with these type of field sizes was helpful. Just so you know, this was our second year doing this. Well, first year as a co-op, I worked with several growers in 2012 that flew on cover crop as well. But as far as the co-op, it started in 2013. So on August 28th, we flew on a variety of annual ryegrass called Boundary, about 25 pounds an acre. And like I said before, we worked with the seed dealer, Jamie Scott. I don't know if you guys are familiar with him. He does a lot of conferences talking about cover crops. And then Nick's Flying Service is the one who we contracted out. Both Jamie and Nick are from Indiana. And it was really difficult for me to find someone that was willing to work with me in Michigan. So if you guys know of anyone, let me know, because I think, if we want to keep doing stuff like this, we need to find someone a little bit more local. So for our program, within that sediment reduction grant, about 500 acres were flown on, but in addition, about 1,600 acres were flown on, just voluntary, out of pocket. Growers were interested in trying this, so they took no cost share money out of it and did it just to try it and see how it worked for them. And we're pretty happy with the results. I'll show you some pictures. Whoops. Okay, so this is just what the whole operation looked like. They bring in the seed, that's the white bags or the seeds that they truck on. That was all annual ryegrass that we did. And then they go in and they put it in the auger truck, and the auger truck fills and calibrates the seed for the plane. And then it comes out of this winged broadcast spreader. So that's just some pictures of the operation. They're very fast. They did 1,600 acres in about 3 hours. And that was because they had to wait for the wind to die down and everything like that. So they can get a lot of acres done in a short period of time. This is just an image. I've had a lot of growers say, well, isn't the seed going to get stuck in the corn? And, you know, how do we know it's going to fall through? And, you know, it probably won't fall through until we go and harvest. So, you know, timing is good for that. We want to make sure when we do fly in, the corn is starting to, you know, the canopy is starting to open up a little bit so it can fall through. But this image on the left-hand side with the black tarp right here, it was like a simulated setup. So they flew on, this was like in the middle of July, which is a little early for us to fly on. And you can see, I don't know if you can see, there's seed scattered throughout there pretty well. So there's a pretty even stand just from one pass going through. This is one of my growers' fields on the right-hand side. And so this is before harvest, probably early November-ish. And you can see the annual ryegrass is coming up pretty well here. As soon as he gets that crop off, more sunlight gets to those plants and they can actually come up a little bit thicker. There's always pros and cons, and so we can talk a little bit about that. There's a lot on here. Mainly the most benefits that we're getting from aerial seeding these covers on is getting them in the ground early. So they're actually establishing early. We're getting the benefits of them sequestering more nutrients, having deeper root growths and things like that. More fields covered in less time, less wear and tear on your equipment, and the passes in the fall, and less man hours. You get a lot of acres covered in a day. But there's the cons in the sense that, you know, you've got to increase that seed rate and that cost a little bit. Finding someone to do it for you and work with you, I was really lucky to fall in with these guys, and I think my growers are lucky for that as well. The timing, you know, making sure you hit that window before, you know, let's say leaf drop for soybeans and stuff. You know, you want to get that in before then. So kind of scouting your own fields and making sure the timing is right for the group. Application costs, you know, 10 to 20 bucks, and then with the additional seed costs, it can get you up to $35 an acre, which is costly. You know, if we have $3 corn, $3-4 corn, you know, that's another cost, you know, for us. Making sure we get the cash crop off early. You want as much sun getting to that, you know, that cover crop that you planted, so maybe using shorter day corn, things like that, which can also cut into yield, some people think. So, you know, if we want this to succeed, we really want to, you know, look at all the steps associated with making it work. Annual ryegrass did well on our fields. We had some really poor quality soils, and it germinated and looked really good on those grounds, but really it looked the best on our highest quality grounds with the highest organic matter, and, you know, it just caught on best there. This is just a quick chart to kind of, you know, really focus on the timing of getting your cover in the ground. Let's see. Versus planting on the beginning of October versus the end of October, you can see that these cover crops, this is cereal rye, this cover crop can actually take up more nitrogen if it's planted earlier. And that just makes sense with, you know, the daylight hours, with the soil temperatures and things like that. It can actually hold on to those nutrients or take those nutrients up at a better rate. So we're looking at over like 170 pounds of nitrogen taken up versus, you know, if they got it in late October, you know, you're getting just under 100 pounds of nitrogen. So that's something to think about too. That's pretty much it. I'm going to kind of go through some pictures so you guys can see. The one on the left is, you know, right after harvest, I'd say end of November-ish, late November, and you can see that the cover is actually pushing through that heavy residue. It's pretty strong. That was the timing was good. If they got it off in December, you know, which a lot of people did this year, you know, would it look that good? You know, in some cases, yes. In some cases, no, maybe. But for the most part, you know, we were pretty happy with it. This was a little earlier on the right-hand side. You could just see how thick it is. Down here, there's some chickweed and stuff, but man, I don't know if you can see it. It was 5-6 inches in some areas, this annual ryegrass coming up. So we were really happy with that. And the reason we like annual ryegrass is it may not look great on the surface. It's a shorter plant, but underneath the ground, the root structure is really deep, and it can run really deep, and it's really spreads out and really holds that topsoil. So we really like annual ryegrass for that. This is just kind of showing the weight of some of these ryegrass. I mean, we were just really happy with how some of these turned out. This woman, she does some silage on her farm. So you can see right here, this left side of the field was for silage, so there's not a lot of residue. So, and she got that up early, so the ryegrass really took off and looks really good. But even to the right side of that picture, where she had grain corn, it was still pushing through that residue pretty well and looked pretty good. I gave these shirts out to my growers who were in the co-op, and they were pretty stoked about it. That was kind of a quick presentation. I know, I'm here in between lunch and you guys, so if you guys have any more questions or want to hear more about that, I'll be here all day. So we're pretty excited with what's going on, and I don't know, let us know if it's an option that you want to talk more about. Thank you.